When I was in 3rd grade, my family moved from Los Angeles to a tiny little town called Bonsall, population 598. All of the kids from the Pala Indian Reservation attended my elementary school along with children from many migrant farm workers. I made friends with a girl named Norma, and one time my parents gave me permission to ride the bus home with her all the way to the reservation. It took about 30 to 40 minutes, as I recall. I remember my first impression. Small homes, some very dilapidated, old cars and trucks, unpaved roads. There were no lawns, just dirty yards, and not many plants anywhere. Pala Mission was in walking distance of the town. So, at my age, a 3rd grader, I obviously did not understand the history of Native Americans in our country, the colonization, forced assimilation, and violence. At Norma's house, her mom was home, we had snacks, and we played out back with some of the other kids from school, and it was fun. By the time I got to high school, I noticed that my elementary school girlfriends from the reservation came to class sporadically. By the time we were sophomores and juniors, they didn't come to school at all. Interestingly, the boys typically stayed in school because they had sports. That was the incentive for them to show up. But for the girls, what was the point? There were not role models of older brothers and sisters who went on to college, and trade schools were for boys, not girls. I imagine that their parents may not have been able to provide very much oversight and assistance with homework because they also dropped out of school early. The generational cycle continued. Fast forward, last year, the Pala Band of Mission Indians Foundation offered financial assistance for my class's 50th high school reunion celebration, which I was coordinating. That is a really long story, and I'd rather not get into it. But suffice it to say that the casino has brought in a lot of revenue, and I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who said that they might be able to help us. I was very happy to learn that that person that I was working with from the foundation knew Norma and my other friend Eddie, and I asked her to strongly encourage them to come to the reunion. I started crying when I saw her, so grateful that she looked so well and seemed happy. They both still lived on the reservation, and the strong community bonds have supported them over the years of some very personal trials and tribulations. One of my other friends runs the Pala radio station, and I have to say it the way he would say it. Pala Res Radio 91.3 on your FM dial. That's not really how he would say it. He has a much deeper voice than I do. So not only do they play news and music, but there are also programs with Kumeyaay elders who are teaching the language of their ancestors. There's a weekly storytelling time called Voices from the Circle, so that their cultural history does not get lost, and a podcast called Pala Life that features many of the residents. So that's just a micro version of what's happening. The same thing's happening nationally. Native resilience has been woven into the fabric of daily life through cultural preservation and revitalization. Over 574 federally recognized tribes, I had no idea when I was looking this up, exist in the United States today, each with its unique languages, traditions, and governance structures. Despite centuries of suppression, there is a vibrant movement now to reclaim and revitalize Indigenous languages, many of which were on the brink of extinction. Tribal elders, often the last fluent speakers, worked tirelessly with younger tribal schools and universities, online resources, and community immersion initiatives to bring those languages back from the brink, recognizing that language is not merely a tool for communication, but it's a vessel for culture, worldview, and identity. We remember the sorrow of the Trail of Tears, where nations were forcibly marched from their homelands, leaving a trail of tears and loss. We remember the boarding school experiences where children were taken from their families, their hair cut, their languages forbidden, and their cultural identity suppressed. And yet, in the face of this injustice, the stories of Native Americans were not solely stories of pain. They are also profoundly powerful narratives of resistance and resilience. This resilience is not a passive endurance. It's an active, vibrant strength rooted in community, culture, and spirituality. The Native poet and artist recognizes that every feather, every chant, every prayer says one truth: we are still here. Many Native American traditions teach the interconnectedness of all living things and the sacredness of creation. One of my favorite books was recommended to me by Glenn and Alice. I know you're watching. And it was called Braiding Sweetgrass. Has anyone else read that? Oh, beautiful book. She is from the Potawatomi tribe and has a PhD in botany. The book is beautifully written, weaving together the role of Indigenous knowledge as an alternative or complementary approach to Western mainstream scientific methodologies. I read this book several years ago, and it opened my eyes to new and very interesting perspectives. The connection to the land remains a cornerstone of Native American identity and resilience. For Indigenous peoples, land is not merely property, but a living entity, a source of spiritual substance, cultural memory, and physical well-being. This deep reverence for Mother Earth has fueled contemporary movements for environmental justice, most prominently exemplified by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe's resistance against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016 and 2017. Thousands of water protectors who were protesting, representing hundreds of tribes and allies, gathered to protect their sacred lands and water, demonstrating the enduring power of collective action and the spiritual imperative to defend the natural world. Though the pipeline was eventually completed, Standing Rock galvanized a global movement and highlighted the ongoing struggle for Indigenous sovereignty and environmental protection. So the mid-20th century saw the rise of powerful Native American civil rights and movements, inspired by and sometimes collaborating with the broader civil rights movement. Groups like the American Indian Movement, AIM, founded in 1968, brought national and international attention to the plight of Indigenous peoples. AIM organized protests, occupations, and legal challenges to reclaim treaty rights, demand self-determination, and combat systemic discrimination. The 1969 occupation of Alcatraz Island, the 1972 Trail of Broken Treaties March on Washington, D.C., and the 1973 Wounded Knee occupation were pivotal moments that forced the U.S. government to acknowledge its broken promises and the enduring sovereignty of Native people. These actions, often met with violence and suppression, were a clear declaration that Native Americans would no longer be silent victims. Artistic expression has also served as a powerful medium for resilience in cultural community. From traditional weaving, pottery, and beadwork to contemporary literature, film, music, and painting, Native artists tell their stories, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate their heritage. Authors like Joy Harjo, the first Native American U.S. Poet Laureate, and artists like Jane Quick-to-See Smith use their platforms to articulate Indigenous experiences, history, and aspirations, reaching wider audiences and fostering understanding. Economically, many tribal nations are working towards self-determination and sustainable development. Through tribal casinos, yay, tourism, natural resource management, and diversified businesses, tribes are generating revenue to fund essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure on their reservations. This economic empowerment is crucial for breaking cycles of poverty and fostering self-sufficiency, allowing tribes to govern their own destinies rather than relying on federal handouts. And thank goodness they're doing that. However, the journey of resilience is far from over. Native American communities continue to face systemic challenges, including disproportionately high rates of poverty, inadequate health care, limited educational opportunities, and the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. These issues are direct legacies of historical trauma and ongoing discrimination. Yet, in response, Native communities are leading their own solutions, establishing tribal justice systems, developing culturally relevant healthcare programs, and advocating fiercely for policy change at local, state, and federal levels. So the story of Native American resilience is not one of mere survival, but of thriving. It is a narrative of profound strength, deep spiritual connection, ingenious adaptation, and unwavering hope. It is a testament to the power of community, the wisdom of ancestral knowledge, and the enduring human capacity to find light in the darkest times. May we, in our own journey, remember that the spirit of resilience is a powerful force for good, and that the path to justice is walked together with listening hearts and a commitment to reconciliation. Amen, and may it be so.